Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you today with Fall of X #1, which is X-Men Hellfire Gala 2023. Oh boy, do I have a love-hate relationship with this book. Um, just right there off the bat. Oh, look, we're swinging on plants and from who gives a shit? With that said, it's interesting to see how Kamala Khan is revived now as an X-Men. Now, there may be some spoilers abounding in this issue, so if you don't want things to be spoiled for you, if you're following this series, pause this, go get the book, read it, now you're back. So you come to find out, even though when Kamala was originally introduced, she was introduced as an Inhuman. She, went through the Terrigen Mist and all that jazz. We learned that the Terrigen Mist kills mutants on sight, and Xavier explains that before she hit the age where her X gene would activate, she was hit with the Terrigen Mist, so it suppressed her X gene, and that's the whole yippity yap of how she became a mutant. So I think it's kind of dumb. I mean, I understand in terms of writing, they had to figure out a way to introduce her as a mutant, so killing her off and then reviving her on Krakoa made sense, but I hate that. I think what pisses me off about it is the fact that they made a big hoopla before this, the death of Ms. Marvel, and all these tragic promo photos, just so she'll come back a couple of issues later. That's bullshit. I'm sorry, I try not to cuss in the reviews, but God, do I hate this era. It just grinds me the wrong way. With that said, this is, I'm not even going to read all that. Feel free to pause if you want to read everybody working on this book. As you can see, there was a lot. And you can tell where there's moments of awesomeness and moments where there's inconsistencies. So the Hellfire Gala is starting. We see the Cuckoo Stepford twins, or whatever they're called. Welcome once more to Magnus Island, or Minky's Island, whatever. Protectorate of the nation of Krakoa. And another Hellfire Gala. We are the 5 and 1, and we are your hostesses this season. The theme of this year's party is friendship and futurism, a dialogue. Now, one thing that I will say, even though I hate this whole separatist mindset that the Krakoans have, I mean, I get it after years of persecution, but still, you go back and you read like Claremont era X-Men and what Stan Lee initially visualized for the X-Men, to see now how we go back to X-Men Fantastic Four, the newer one, not the original one that was good. I mean, Zdarsky did what he could with what he had. I haven't finished it because it irks the shit out of me, but what I'm getting to is the fact that the X-Men come to Reed and Sue and basically say, we're taking your kid and you don't have a choice. Well, geez, why don't everybody just get in line for their beet rations while we're at it? That's not okay. And that's kind of where I really was like, I'm done with this. I don't care anymore. Because, yeah, and I hate that they even kind of painted Reed as an asshole to kind of show that both sides are not that good. That's what I liked about Zdarsky's run, is even though the X-Men pissed me off more, and they get in this big fight, instead of just leaving the kid alone to grow up, Reed does something extreme in that run, which I'll finish eventually. I had to take a long break from it. But you can just kind of see the gray lines between both factions. So anyway, the Cuckoo twins are talking about all the different innovations they have, how they're going to introduce a new X team, how Forge has basically cured the homeless and hunger problems that are plaguing Earth. And also, if you guys remember, we went over the free comic book day Uncanny Avengers. This runs congruently with this one. So we see Scott gets a distress call, and he runs off. And then we see how Kitty still cannot go through the gates, which I always thought was kind of cool, and why I wouldn't mind reading Marauders, because Kitty, at this point in her life, how she always looks up to Logan because he trained her, like how he trained Rogue, Jubilee. She's very much kind of starting to take on his attitude. And this is the Kitty I like. I hated the X-Men Gold Kitty, where we get up to her and Peter finally going to tie the knot, and she walks away. Talked out of it by Peter's own sister. That would never happen. Now, granted, as much as that pissed me off, at least during that era, out of all that crap, we got the marriage of Rogue and Gambit, which was awesome. And then we come to Krakoa and they're not married anymore, and we don't... You can kind of see where I'm going with this. Now Destiny and Mystique are having a fight, whatever. Kitty's just kind of on her own because she sort of feels like a outcast amongst the mutants since she can't use the gates, and that's why I like her. Now, the overall thing that irks me about this book, when Hickman did Powers of 10 and House of X, he had a plan. He told, after he did those 2 books and everyone kind of went off and did their own thing, he said, you guys can kind of tell Krakoan stories however you want, but when it's time, we need to start bringing everybody back to the next phase. When the next phase came to be, everyone said they didn't want it. And that's why Hickman walked away. And that's why we still have Krakoan-era X-Men. That's why now that they're doing this Fall of X, why a lot of what Hickman set up doesn't make sense. Like, all of a sudden Rasputin's here, and we'll talk about the next part here in just a second. And you can see just the way it started, what bored me is there's a lot of just standing and talking. Now, the back and forth that Kamala has with Xavier, talk about how she's scared and all this other stuff, you see the moments of what Charles Xavier is. But what irked my Girk the most, let me see if I can find it. Hold on. As he takes off his helmet, he goes, the reason we hope that you would announce your mixed heritage is just that we would be proud to have you amongst us, but also that it might help change the minds of those who fear us. You have a lot to process. We hope you will join us, but not tonight. Be with your friends and family. Be good to yourself. Join us in your own time. And please call me Charles. Now, what irks me about all this is Rasputin comes to talk to Kamala, and she goes, now, this is where I have to kind of remind myself that Rasputin's from the future. She's a hybrid of all the X-Men. And I hate it, just the way she said it just rubbed me the wrong way. She goes, the great X removed Cerebro and gazed upon you with his clear blue eyes. Give me a fucking break. Charles Xavier is a man of vision, but then I have to remember how characters like Bishop and Rasputin know Xavier in the terms of history. So I try to look at it that way, but I hate that a lot of these characters, a lot of these X-Men see themselves as gods. And it's like, just because you figured out the resurrection thing does not make you a god. Anyway, I don't want to get into it. Some of the artwork is okay. You can kind of tell where some of it was sort of chintzy or looked like tracing or 3D modeling. And this is where I got excited because they introduced the new X-Men team. And, they got some good characters. They got Sync, Cannonball, Dazzler, Jubilee. I've never heard of Frenzy or Prodigy. And then I've never heard of Talon. But it might have been interesting. And then, of course, the Juggernaut. So it kind of shows how far Kane Marco has come, which is so cool with me. Spoiler alert. I hate that I kind of took delight in this, but the fact that it's like, oh, we're getting another Krakoan book. Not. And then shit just hits the fan. But what pissed me off about this is even though Nimrod comes in and slaughters everybody, what irks me about it the most is, okay, long-time established characters, Sync, Generation Next, Cannonball, the New Mutants, Dazzler during the Dark Phoenix saga, Jubilee during the whole Australian era of X-Men, and then, of course, Kane Marco from way back in the Stan Lee days of X-Men. So I hate that majority of them, Sync, Dazzler, Jubilee, Cannonball, unceremoniously murdered. That bugged me. But what got me excited about it is this tells the beginning of the Fall of X, where these stupid E-entertainment-esque galas, now they have to really stand up for themselves or stick up for themselves and defend their homeland. And then again, okay, going back to things that feel a little out of place. The fact that Sentinel Prime and Sinister are a couple, whereas in House of 10 it was talking about how Sinister eventually started doing the eugenics and started messing with DNA, how we got Rasputin and all those characters. But now we don't know what's going to happen. But it starts to kind of feel like an X-Men book. And this, okay, here's also where I got perturbed. We see a silhouette stabbing a major, long-time character. And come to find out that this murderer is Moira X. Moira's not a murderer. Moira is the biggest caring person in the X-Men world. And when she succumbed to the legacy virus back in the original Uncanny X-Men, it broke everyone's heart. The characters, the readers, it tore me apart. And they just killed her because, at the time, it was because she represented the era of the legacy virus. And Marvel at the time was trying to get away from that story arc, so they finally ended it with Moira killing her and Colossus. Ugh. But just seeing her come back now as a villain like this just irritates the crap out of me, because think about it, when we were jumping between House of X and Powers of 10, Moira kept getting resurrected so she could try to make a better future, and that's why she teamed up with Magneto and Charles to try to make Krakoa. Initially is to make it a safe haven after looking at all these horrendous timelines. And this is another reason why I hope we get the Fall of X. My God. So much reading. But what made this kind of interesting for me, which I'm still not going to bother reading it, is basically all the Krakoan plants have been tainted. So now all the humans are taking it. Something's happening to them. The gates no longer work, which I love how Emma tries to go back after she saves the mutant, smashes her nose, and Kitty goes, so that's how it looks. But what makes it interesting for me is, okay, none of the mutants can use the Krakoan gates now. Moving on. That's a nice panel, by the way, of Rogue just kicking ass like that. Love it. Hold on, I'll come back. Where is it? Hold on. Where is it? Here. So even though the mutants can't use the gates, as I just said, now all of a sudden, Kitty can. That's kind of a cool little twist there. But what made the book for me is Rogue saves Xavier, and he goes, I pushed them into a meat grinder. They're all dead. All dead, and I killed them. Now leave me and go and avenge them. We see Rogue fly off from Krakoa. Avenge Krakoa. Charles trembled in the waves and wept, for all he'd built was now in ruins. He anguished for the children he helped to murder that night. All good things must end, and the fall of the House of X had begun. Pacific, whatever bullshit of Krakoa, population 1. Now, I love seeing our heroes go through adversity and come to save the day. But it's been too many years now of our X-Men seeming like semi-villains, the way that they just kind of vilify everyone but their own. So to kind of see Xavier sitting there on the shore broken made me smile a little. Just kind of taken down a peg from that godlike status. Or the fact that depowered mutants that were living on Krakoa have to be murdered in a disgusting gladiatorial display and then be brought back as a mutant, and then they're welcomed. What bullshit is that? Moira, Stevie, the dance teacher, both of them human. and still played a great part in helping Charles and all of the X-Men through the years. Hell, Stevie was Magneto's second in command when he was the head of the New Mutants. Storm, depowered, led the mutants for years before she finally got her powers back. And now, because you don't have your mutant power, you're seen on as less than. I thought that's what we were trying to overcome in the future. And even when Apocalypse goes after, he has to fight one of the Girthies. I can't remember which one it is. I've done the book. I'll leave a card in here. But Apocalypse says something like, "What's your name?" And she says, "Arrow." And Apocalypse says, "That's a mutant name. What's your," some like pitiful human name? And she's not called Arrow until she's revived. Yeah, I'm very appalled that's what's happened to the X-Men, especially since Spider-Man and the X-Men back in the late 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s were the two franchises that carried Marvel. And now to see them come so low like this just breaks my heart, and that's why it irritates the crap out of me. So I'm hoping from the ashes of this Crapcoa era, we actually get something worth a damn again. Hell, I would even go back to, if you guys read the latter half, I've said this 1,000 times, the latter half of Matthew Rosenberg's on Uncanny X-Men, that was fucking fantastic. So with that said, I apologize for the rant. Had to get it off my chest. Appreciate you guys kind of rolling with it with me. If you've enjoyed what you have seen, or just kind of curious and want to read the whole story in its entirety, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever it is that you grab your comics and action figures and get yourself a copy. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you won't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next to subscribe, that way we can continue to upload content. You guys get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave links down in the description. So with all that said, I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.